Christina Marie here. The first day of non-Vado. I'm not gonna call it that. I am exhausted already, you guys. I've been up since 5. I went to work until 1. I have to go back to work at 6, and I will be there until 1. It's gonna be a mad, insane day. I'm gonna film this really quick. I'm gonna eat my lunch, and then I'm gonna take a nap for at least 2.5 hours because, okay, so this is my October wrap-up. These are all the books that I read in the month of October. I read 13 books, I think 13. Most of them were ebooks. Oh my gosh, I know, right? So let me get the hardcover books out of the way, and so then we can get on with the ebooks, and I'll insert the pictures here or here so you can know what the covers look like. So let's just dive on in, okay? By the way, correction, I just counted. I read 12 books this month. 12. Okay, so these are in no particular order, but one of the first books I read this month was Rowdy by J. Crownover. I had an arc of this. This is actually the physical copy, but I had an ebook arc that I read, and I really, really enjoyed this book. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. This was a huge step up for me from Nash. Nash isn't my favorite. It's probably my least favorite of the books, but it's still good. But Rowdy is probably, the order goes Rule, Rome, Rowdy, Jet, Nash. That's my order. And I really enjoyed this book, and I loved the female protagonist, or the female lead in this book. Salem, she was great. Very strong, very vulnerable, just very authentic, and just an all-around great character. She had her flaws as well, and it worked for me this time around. As opposed to, like I said, with Nash and his protagonist, Saint, that didn't work for me. This one really, really worked for me. The only reason I gave it a 4.5 is I felt like there was a little teeny something missing, but I can't pinpoint what it is. I just can't pinpoint what it is, but I really, really enjoyed this book. Highly recommend it. It was great. Any books that I talk about that I have reviews of, I will link them down below so you can check out my review of this book. Then, of course, I read Court Carmack's All Broke Down, which is the second book in the Rustic University series. The first book being All Lined Up. Still my favorite after reading this one. I gave this book a 4.5 stars out of 5 as well. There was something that happened in this book that just kind of rubbed me the wrong way, but not in a bad way. It just didn't work for me, but everything else was perfect. I really loved Silas. Oh my gosh. I loved Dylan. I loved the character. Silas, we were introduced to him in the first book, and we didn't love him. I didn't love him for obvious reasons, but he's redeemed in this book, and I really, really enjoyed it. Cora knows how to write a book. She knows how to give you some feels. She knows how to develop a character. She knows how to make a character matter to you, and that's what she did in this book. Silas mattered to me. Dylan mattered to me. It was great to see Dallas and Carson again as well. They all mattered to me in this book. I got all of the feels. And you guys know how I feel about Coach Cole. I still love Coach Cole, so I saw him in this book. Yes, hey boo, yes. Next, I read a new book by one of my all-time favorite contemporary authors, Here With Me by Heidi McLaughlin. This is not the copy that I read. I read an ebook copy, but this is the physical copy that was sent to me. I bought it, and Heidi signed it right there if you can see it. This was a phenomenal read. Phenomenal read. I ended up giving it a 4.5 out of 5 stars as well. I loved this book. It's more like a 4.75 stars. There was one thing in this book that happened that I was just like, but it's really just me being picky. I loved this book tremendously. Like, it's almost perfection. The new characters in here, from Riley to Evan to Nate to Livy to Julianne, to everybody. I loved this book. It's definitely interesting that it is a romantic suspense. It's like contemporary / suspense kind of thing, and it was really good. I can't wait for the second book. Heidi, I need a second book like now. I don't have time to wait. Girl, I love this book. Then the final paperback that I read this month was The Darkest Touch by Jenna Showalter, and this is actually part of the Lords of the Underworld series. This is the 11th book in the series. I honestly wish I would have known that going in. I didn't know it until I started reading it, and because I said, wait a minute, it feels like I'm missing a lot of backstory. And that's partially my fault for not researching the book, but this was sent to me by the publisher and for a read and review. I ended up giving this book a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I feel like I could have given it a 4 if I would have started with, if I would have had more context on the series, if I would have read like the previous 10 books. But even with that, this book was honestly about 50% foreplay, 20% action, I don't know my math, and 30%, and then 30% romance. Like, is that right? 50% foreplay, 30% romance, 20% action. I don't know. Does that add up to 100? I think it does. I wasn't thrilled with it. I feel like a lot of the foreplay was just unnecessary. I was really more interested in the action side of it and the plot development and the plot progression. I didn't really care about the romance too much, which is weird because this is a paranormal romance, so you should kind of care about the romance if you're reading it. The characters were kind of iffy for me at times. I loved them. I hated them. I was just like whatever with them a lot of times. I talk about it more thoroughly in my review, which I will link down below. But yeah, this one wasn't my favorite read of the month, so I ended up giving it a 3.5 stars. Okay, the next book I read is an ebook. It's called Bleed Like Me by Krista Desire, whatever. I'll put it right here. This book was a really painful read. It was just very harsh, and it was sad. It was about two troubled teenagers really, whose romance is just really destructive. It's destructive for them to be together, and when you first meet the characters, you start to understand, oh, this is not going to end well. And it's one of those books where you know it's not going to end well, but it was written so well, and I felt so much, and I just, oh, it was so perfectly written. I mean, there were times when I just was like, oh, my heart went out to these characters and the situation. There were times when I got so flippin' angry at them. But you empathize with the characters a lot, and you also just want to strangle them. And that's what I loved about this book. I was in that book from start to finish. It was just such a provoking read, in my opinion. And I ended up giving this book a 4 out of 5 stars. Next book I read was Burying Water by K.A. Tucker. This is her newest book that just released earlier this month, I believe. I read this as part of the blog tour, book review tour, and I really enjoyed it. Granted, I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars because K.A. Tucker clashes with my reading preference. Like, I feel like she can never give me the endings that I want, and I don't expect happily ever afters, but there's something that's always missing for me from her ending, so I can never give it a full 5 out of 5 stars. So I ended up giving this one a 4 out of 5, but I still greatly loved it. I felt like the characters were well written. The story overall was really enjoyable. There were just a lot of great things about this book. But then for me personally, there's just something about the way a book ends that sticks with you. And for me, the ending of this book just didn't work for me personally. It works for a lot of people. K.A. Tucker can write. That woman can write like nobody's business. But her endings for me just don't ever work for me. Ever. But in the end, I loved it and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Next, I read Love and Other Unknown Variables by Shannon Lee Alexander. This was another book that was sent to me actually by Entangled Teen, I believe. And I've never read anything by her before. This may be her debut work. I believe it is. And this is basically about a boy named Charlie who is this super smart dude. He's just smart, like MIT smart. He has no idea about like the emotion side of life. He is trying to figure out the formula for love because he meets this other girl, Charlotte, nicknamed Charlie as well, Charlie and Charlie, who brings out these feelings in him that he doesn't quite know what to do. He doesn't know how to deal with them. And so this book kind of takes you through that journey because Charlotte actually has some issues that she's dealing with on her own. And you just kind of see them working through it. This is actually a sad book. It's sad. Basically, the thing with Charlotte is that she is sick, and Charlie learns that Charlotte is sick. And so it just kind of starts a whole wave of things. Charlie is a prankster. He is definitely a prankster, along with his 2 friends whose names I can't remember for the life of me because I read this book like 3 weeks ago. I enjoyed the book. I really, really liked it up until a certain point. When I first started reading it, I just was kind of like, whatevs. I hate it, love it. Probably about 40% of the way in, I was there. I was there, and I was on this roller coaster and ready to ride it to the end. The ending of this book was so good. There is a character in this book. Let me see if I can find her name. Mrs. Dunwitty. I loved this character. Mrs. Dunwitty really made the book for me because I think personally she teaches Charlie his greatest lesson, and she's not even really 100% trying to. He just learns from her as a person and from observation and experience with her. And I loved her character, and I love what she did in terms of his character development. She was such a perfect character that Shannon Lee Alexander added to this book. I could not have thought of anything better than to add Mrs. Dunwitty. I loved her. Overall, I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. It was really enjoyable, but for me, it took me a little too long to get invested in it. I figured when I'm about 30% of the way into the book, I better be really liking it, because you only have 70% left to really make me like something, and I really don't feel like I can give you a perfect 5 out of 5 based off of 70% of the book. I just can't do that, me, personally. The next book I read is Dead New World by Ryan Hill. This is a zombie book. This is probably my first zombie book of the month. This was an October read, Halloween, so it made sense to do that. I liked this book. I liked it, but it wasn't my favorite book. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. The world was interesting. Some of the characters were interesting. I feel like the romance got in the way a lot of the times. I feel like the romance in this book was so unnecessary, and that's probably why I didn't love it as much as I did. Zombie books for me, especially something called Dead New World, should be like insane, crazy, like dark, high adrenaline, fast paced, and I just felt like every time something happened, we would get a little locomotion, we would get a little, progress, and then it would be halted a little bit because the main character had to talk about his love interest, and I'm like, I don't even know how y'all fell in love. I don't quite know how this happened. Like, I read it, and I know I read it, but it happened like that. It was one of those insta-love situations for me. I know the author tried to make time progress a little bit faster in those moments with the two characters, but it wasn't believable for me, so that was a turn off. And then every 2 seconds, he was talking about her. Like, I didn't care. I really didn't care. I want to get to the zombies and the action and the plot progression. Let's go. And I just never quite got that. So 3 out of 5 stars. Oh, sorry, 3.5 out of 5 stars. Next book I read was End of Normal by S.C. R. Scott. This was another book that was sent to me. This was kind of like a dystopian, sci-fi, fantasy, paranormal, somewhere in there kind of book. And because it wasn't that memorable to me, I can't really remember what it was all about. Basically, there's like some kind of apocalyptic moment that happens. There's an invasion of like aliens or something, and a lot of the like parents die, and the kids are left behind, and they're trying to survive and figure out what's going on. I don't even really 100% remember. I just remember that I was over this book by like 40% of the way in. It picked up a little bit towards the end, which is why I could say I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. Closer to 3.25, or not 3.25, closer to like 2.75. I didn't love this book. I can't even begin to tell you why. The only thing I liked was the main character and her relationship with her deaf brother. I thought that relationship was really cool. This girl, the main character, was in love with boy number 1, and then boy number 1 did something that she was just like, and then she fell in love with boy number 2, and then boy number 2 did. I wasn't about it. I just wasn't about that part of the story. I just kind of felt like, girl, get it together. No. And then the plot was a little weak in spaces. I couldn't really follow what was going on all the time. And then once we got to the part where the teens were out searching for this one person, I guess, that had answers to what was going on, I just didn't care. I just didn't care. And so 3 out of 5 stars, I think, is me pushing it. But that's the rating I gave it, 3 out of 5. The next book I read is by Jen McLaughlin, and it's called Fractured Lines, which is part of the Out of Line series that she's writing. I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed it. It was like a short novella-ish size book. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. It was really interesting to me because it picks up, or it brings the characters from the Out of Line series as they're going through life and healing and forgiveness and family and love, and you know, it was just really good. This is a military-ish read. The husband is actually recovering from military scars, mentally, physically, psychologically, you know, as well as I think he was in a car accident, which is where this story kind of picks up. His wife, on the other hand, you know, is trying to raise their child, trying to love him and take care of him. And then one day, husband does something that just kind of throws her over the brink, and they're trying to come together and heal from that. It was just a really emotional read that I really enjoyed. It was believable to me. I really felt for the characters. And at times, I went to the depths of hell with the main character, Finn. Or I went to, you know, the land of pain with the main character, what's her name, Carrie. It was really an emotional read. And definitely Jen McLaughlin knows what she's doing. She can write really, really well. I really enjoyed this book. 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I read is actually a compilation of 3 short stories, and it's called, the book itself is called When We Met, 4 short stories. And the authors of the book, A.L. Jackson, Molly McAdams, Christina Lee, and Tiffany King. I have read none of these authors except A.L. Jackson, and you guys know how I feel about her. Her books were a little too heavy for me, so I've only read the 1. So it was really interesting to see another A.L. Jackson story, and I will say I really enjoyed this book. The thing that impressed me the most was that these are 4 different women writing 4 different stories centered around the same family of characters, and they're all connected. The stories flow nicely. Granted, they start and stop at different periods. The writing styles are different, but it worked really well. I liked how it didn't feel choppy to me at all. Some of the characters from previous stories were in one story. The characters were all shared. They were all in the same family of characters, and I thought that was the coolest thing. I related more to certain characters than others. Of course, I enjoyed certain authors' writing styles than others, of course. But overall, it was a really enjoyable read. It was a nice, fluffy read with a little bit of drama, but I really enjoyed how this book came together a lot. So 4 out of 5 stars. And then the final story that I read for the month of October is called Dirty Deeds by Lorelei James. This book was also sent to me. None of the books I read this month, you guys, were of my choice. I pretty much read everything that was sent to me by publishers. That's how my October went. Dirty Deeds. I really liked this book. I liked it a lot. It was fun to read. It's about this girl who lets her professional life and personal life come together, and she ends up getting burned by it. So in order to kind of heal, she needs to remove herself from the situation. So she goes down to South Dakota, I think, where she has to settle her aunt's real estate, or her aunt's estate rather, and her best friend is down there, and she's introduced to her best friend's brother, and she's not looking for a relationship. She's looking for just pure, unadulterated, hot and heavy sex. That's what she's looking for. So best friend asks brother, hey, come have sex with my best friend because you like having sex and she likes having sex. Come together and give her what she wants. Little do we know, that's never all there is to it. There's always going to be emotions that get involved. There's always going to be feelings and growing pains and everything. And that's pretty much what happens. The cool part about this story is that the lead male protagonist is Native American, and oh my gosh, I'm so happy about that. I love it, love it, love it when I see different ethnicities, different cultures. I love it. And so I really enjoyed the main character. His name is Nathan. Let me look. Yes, his name is Nathan, and the female protagonist, her name is Tate. Tate and Nate. Ugh, don't like it. So Tate and Nathan. And I really enjoyed their chemistry. Their chemistry together was so good. So good. And this was an enjoyable read. The only thing that kept me from giving this book a perfect score was, and I said this in my review, which I will link down below, the author introduces the issue of discrimination against Native Americans, but she doesn't delve into it. I don't know if the author is full Native American or part Native American or not at all, but in those instances where you introduce a topic like racism or discrimination or segregation, whatever, you need to go there. And I don't feel like the author went there. I feel like she just kind of brushed over the surface of it and just was like, there, it's there. You have to acknowledge the fact that he's Native American, and if you're going to acknowledge his struggles, then you have to do it well. And I feel like she tried, but not hard enough. And that's the only thing. I would have rather her not have tried at all, to be completely honest, than to have kind of tried but didn't hit the mark. I don't know. That's the only thing where I was just like, Granted, I know the story is not about his personal experiences. It's more about Tate and her personal experiences. But still, if you're going to put it in there, then you need to be able to deliver 100%. And I just didn't feel like that happened, which is why I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. So those are all the books I read this month, you guys. A total of 12 books, I'd say, with my 2 jobs and my crazy sporadic working hours. I'd say that was a pretty damn good month. I am so happy that I'm able to read still and keep up with, you know, the pacing of things. I will be back in a couple of days with my November TBR. And yes, you guys can tell I'm getting sleepy. So it's time for me to go take my nap for a couple hours and then I have to head to work. So comment down below with the things that you read in October. Thumbs up this video. Make sure you're subscribed. Also, when you comment down below, let me know if you've read any of the books that I read and what your thoughts were on them. No spoilers, of course, for other people. But yeah, I would love to know if you've read any of these books. So I will see you guys in my next video. Bye. Also, in case you guys didn't know, I am doing NaNoWriMo. I have decided to do NaNoWriMo. The only thing is I can't start it until Wednesday. And Wednesday is what day? What day is Wednesday? Wednesday is the 5th. That is when I'll be able to start NaNoWriMo, November 5th. Because I'm working so many overnight shifts this week, tonight, tomorrow night, and the night after, that I need to get sleep. And so that is what I'm going to be doing. I'm just going to be sleeping a lot and I won't have time to really write. So November 5th is when I'm actually going to start really focusing on NaNoWriMo. So if you guys have started, comment down below, leave your username or whatever so I can find you and we can be buddies. I'll leave my NaNoWriMo information down below in the description so you can find me and add me as a buddy and we can kind of write together and encourage each other. Also, a cool thing that I saw Christina Horner do on her video, if you have started NaNoWriMo, leave in the comments down below the first sentence of your novel. I think that is so cool. Such a good idea. So if you started and you have a first sentence, comment down below, leave it there so we can just kind of thumbs up it and support you in this journey of writing. I will leave my first sentence in the description down below as well. So thanks so much for watching, you guys. I'm going to go for real this time. Bye.